There is a lot of controversy surrounding these LA fires, isn't there? And as we all know, the politics now is essentially nothing more than WWE wrestling. We see the political theater man himself get into character before his interview with Meet the Press.
Governor Gavin Newsom, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And while he is getting into character, the LA mayor seemingly has nothing to say. And of course she doesn't, because she's fresh off the plane from a vacation and hasn't been given her talking points yet.
Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up? Appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today?
And of course, then you have the lesbianite trio of the fire chief, the assistant fire chief, and the other one, who can't really care less if they would be able to carry a full-grown man out of a burning fire.
They are terrible.
Oh, yes, they're quite awful. But they are lesbians, so...
And also just not clearing out the bush that would prevent this fire from spreading as rapidly as it did, diverting water away from the city and the fire hydrants not being filled up with water, so not being able to actually put out the fire. And then, of course, the LAFD fire budget being cut by $17.6 million, all while finding hundreds of millions of dollars to send to the Middle East and foreign wars.
AccuWeather estimates the total damage and economic loss from the wildfires is at least $250 billion.
Where are you going to get the money? I don't know. You're going to ask me, weren't you?
Oh, and then you also have the insurance companies not covering fire damage and not renewing almost 70% of all of the homes in the Palisades.
Data point this morning confirmed. State Farm said last year, we're non-renewing 69% of the homes we insure currently today in Palisades.
Are you pissing me off, Don? This is fucking incredible. This is fucking stupid.
And you have the celebrities that are going on the news and sharing their opinions on what's happened and some questions that they might have.
California has a lot of problems that sort of baffle the mind as far as why they do things. And then in the events like this, you sort of look, well, is it on purpose? Which, it's an insane thing to think. But one begins to ponder whether or not there is a purpose in mind. What could it be, you know? I don't know. Do they want the state empty? I don't know. Reminds me of the old cattle barons clearing people off the land, you know? But I don't know. I can make all kinds of horrible theories up in my head, conspiracy theories and everything else, but it just seemed a little convenient that there was no water and and that the wind conditions were right and that there are people ready and willing and able to start fires. And are they commissioned to do so, or are they just acting on their own volition? I don't know.
The newly announced high-speed rail map compared to the fires. Not saying anything, just showing you a picture.
I totally don't know what I'm talking about.
And of course, there's all these questions being asked, right? Because these baffling blunders have all converged on this just unbelievable story that this has all happened completely out of happenstance and wasn't planned. And that's what we're all really trying to figure out now. What's going to happen to this land, right? Is everyone getting all of their houses back? You know, the streets are going to be aligned and they're going to be built back exactly the way they were. Your neighbors are all going to move in exactly as it was before the fire, or is something else going to happen? And this really is the million-dollar question that is on everyone's mind, which is who's going to own the land that's being built?
California Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order this week to stop what he calls predatory real estate investors from taking advantage of wildfire victims. The order makes it illegal for anyone to make an unsolicited offer on property for an amount less than the fair market value in areas impacted by the Palisades and Eaton fires for the next 3 months. Newsom says the ban comes after hearing from people in the community who have received unwelcome and unfair offers. Senator Ted Cruz posted to X, "Now dim politicians are making it harder for those devastated by the wildfires to sell their destroyed properties. This will only hurt the victims."
And we've all heard of these 15-minute smart cities. And the big boogeyman behind those, which everyone's heard about over the past couple of years, is BlackRock. And it's ties to a lot of interesting and potentially nefarious things, or just the massive scale of influence and power that it has. But I think it actually goes deeper than that, because there's ways in which people and companies can still maintain tons of influence over certain aspects of the market while not strictly having their name on the ownership of those assets that they want to control. I just want to highlight a couple things, visualize a couple things with you guys so that we can paint a bigger picture here and see just how powerful money is, but also investments and shareholder value and voting rights when you have your tentacles in so many different companies. And when those companies own companies and they own companies, and it's just this massive company ownership sort of circle jerk. Now, as far as I know, Ian Carroll posted a video on this and coined the term, and it's something called megacorp.
What if I told you that all corporations are actually just one giant megacorporation? And I'm not talking about metaphorically, and I'm not talking about BlackRock. I'm talking about what's really behind BlackRock. So let's break it down real simple. If you're gonna go grocery shopping at a corporate grocery store, all of these corporations are owned by these institutions.
And each one of those obviously has the top three, which are Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. So in each of these grocery stores, and the ownership of them is the same money. It's the same people, it's the same ownership, the same voting rights, the same shareholders.
But we go deeper. If you go for the biggest tech companies, it's basically the exact same list for all four of these.
Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and it's all the same people. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street.
So you might think, okay, these are the institutions that own the whole stock market. But who owns them?
And this is where you get to the ownership of the ownership, and where it becomes this massive circle jerk. Because you have State Street, BlackRock, JP Morgan and Chase, and Morgan Stanley. So the biggest financial institutions and the biggest investment institutions, and who owns them? Well, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street own all of them. So they all just basically own each other.
Just a giant cross ownership pool. And this is where it gets really interesting.
And his visualization that he had on this is perfect. And that comes from a guy who runs a website called Welcome to the Machine. And what that looks like is this.
Let's take BlackRock, for example. This is a list of the top institutional owners of BlackRock and how much of the company they own. And if you visualize it, it looks like this, where the whole square is all of BlackRock's stock, and they get a percentage of that square based on how much they own.
So the white there in the top right corner is the retail investors that invest into these companies. That's you and I buying stocks on any sort of trading app. Gray on the right there as well is all the insiders that own the shares in that company.
And everything else is other giant corporations, investment banks. Like BlackRock themselves own a little bit. State Street owns some. Capital World Management owns some. Bank of America owns some. You see how this works?
But also, all of these institutions are also owned by other institutions. So what does that look like?
Like this, and you realize that all of this that was owned by Merrill Lynch is actually owned by all of these other institutions, and a little bit of us, retail, up there at the top. But here, we've only replaced Merrill Lynch's section. What about all of these guys? Well, then it looks like this.
It's like these fractals, or this inception of investment banks owning investment banks. And then you go even further down the line and you have these representations of other investment banks owning other investment banks, owning other companies, and all of the different shares and the voting rights of all of those different companies, and so on and so forth. So then let's make it even simpler. Let's just say white is us retail investors, gray is people who work at that company and have stocks within their own companies, and then black is just the corporations owning corporations. And that's where you get this.
And this is who owns BlackRock. We'll call it Megacorp. This is the same process done for Bank of America and for State Street and for Best Buy, Amazon, Macy's. Groceries, food, ingredients, building and selling homes, even less white, meaning us, retail ownership.
Google, Facebook, Twitter, Netflix looks the same. Disney looks the same. They're a bit better, obviously. They have a lot more white than some of the other corporations. But again, the vast majority is other corporations owning corporations. So obviously, I think the picture is being painted where when the owners of these companies all own the other companies, all of their interests are aligned. Because each company wants the other company to do well, obviously, because they all own each other. So then we can ask the question, well, who might buy all this land? What's going to happen when we have to build back what was destroyed by the fires? Well, people are going to say, oh, well, BlackRock's going to buy it up. And while that might be sort of technically true, it can hide itself within multiple different ways so that it's very obfuscated as to exactly what's going on here. It's not as unbelievable to think that all of these companies who seemingly on the outside are different from one another and they are competing with each other, that it's very easy for them to have the same interests and align in the same ways to accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish, when effectively it's all owned by the same companies, the same individuals, the same board of directors, right? They're all investing in each other, where they will do anything to prop up whatever it is they want to accomplish, because it would affect every single one of their businesses if anything were to happen. So the big question is, what can we do about this? I think that we can lean on each other, and we can see just how powerful we are when we come together. There's ways in which we kind of can't get around these massive companies. I mean, these social media platforms that we use, the cell phones in our pockets, sometimes we can't get away from them. But what we can do is anytime we can vote with our dollar and take money out of massive corporations and give them back to locally run businesses and mom and pop shops, that's a step in the right direction. And I don't know, I don't have all the answers. I just want to present some things to you guys that I think might be valuable and that are interesting and relevant to share in the wake of what we see happening. But really, I want to know what you guys think too. I want to know how you think we can combat this, or we can move forward with something like this, and how we can have power in and building the world that we want in the wake of these blunders that seem to be happening that are just, they baffle the mind to think that how can so many things be in alignment to go horribly wrong, or just do not make any sense, that people who are getting paid unbelievable salaries to make sure these things don't happen, they end up happening, and how we want to build this back. How exactly do we want to do that, and what does that look like? So that's it for this one. Like and subscribe if you found this valuable. Share it to one of your friends if you find that they would find it valuable too. And as always, support links are in the description. See you guys.